I all of a sudden felt this tremendous sense of sadness.
Yeah.
To think that the biggest realization for most people
is at the deathbed.
Is at the deathbed.
Over and over.
You have spent so much time in your work with people who are either at the end of their life or who are dying or who pass on. You have witnessed countless near-death experiences, and you have so much wisdom to teach us. Have you ever had a near-death experience?
I hesitate to call it near-death just because I was actually unharmed, I think. I didn't have an injury per se, but
What happened?
This was in 2010, so I'd been in academia in all my trainings and practices and ultimately in faculty and all that at the University of Virginia after my training at the University of Colorado. So 17 years of just this very inside the box Western medical mindset. Here's the drugs that are going to save the world. Here's the disease. Here's the drug. All of that paradigm. I was developing chemotherapy and I was using vitamin A compounds to kill cancer. And so that was my world. And I found myself very depressed during those last few years as I started to watch the pharmaceutical companies placing blocking patents to keep these drugs from getting to market. And that was the beginning of a journey into kind of the unfortunate reality that we actually have a healthcare system that's really dominated by the need to manage disease instead of cure or heal. And so that was a pretty dark situation. I was in a couple $100,000 of school debt. My kids were, heading towards college soon. I was, I had no money, no savings account. I was working paycheck to paycheck. I was getting paid $70,000 a year in a university setting as a faculty member, a doctor, 2 sports specialties. And so I was just like trapped. I was financially trapped. I was energetically, emotionally trapped. And in that depression, I started just calling out, for help, I think, to the universe of like, show me the other path, because this is a dead end and I can't figure out my way out of here. I worked too long to become the expert that I am. I can't imagine what I would do next. I can't spend, any more money. I need to start making money, but I don't know how to make money. And then a day came where the universe answered, and I just got this huge amount of information into my experience of like this huge path that I was here to embark on. And I felt amazing. I was like plugged into the universe for the first time in my adult life, I think. And I just felt all of this clarity and all these things. And a couple of weeks later, we had the largest snowstorm in Virginia. And I've never told this story on a podcast, so I'm not sure how this is going to go. But we had a huge snowstorm, and I heat my home that I built with my family and kids. It's a log home in the woods of Virginia, and I heat it by firewood. And so I went out to chop a bunch of firewood in the morning before I went to the hospital. And so I was working in the dark, like 5 a.m, and chopping wood, carrying an armful of wood. I slipped and fell, and a piece of wood separated my ribs on the left, which is kind of a tearing of all the muscles between the ribs. So it was just a lot of chest pain. Nothing was broken, but it was just pain. And so I finished working and got all that wood in there. And then I come back to the vehicle, which I'd borrowed my brother's 4-wheel drive because this massive snowstorm had been forecast. And so we had 22 inches of snow. I grew up in Boulder, Colorado, used to driving in snow, no problem. But snow's half an inch in Virginia, nobody drives.
But you've also now got a hair between 2 ribs thanks to the firewood that like just basically lodged itself into your side.
Yeah, it was an unfortunate slip.
So you're not talking like you don't have like a wedge of wood.
No, not at all. It was internal. What's happened is it's now sending a lot of visceral chest pain through my body, which sets you up for the event that's about to happen. So I'm having that chest pain, and I jump in the vehicle. I'd brushed it off cursory because I'm starting to run late to get to the hospital, and knew I'd be one of the few doctors there. So in a rush to get there. And so I drive slowly for the 6 miles to get to the highway, and you're driving over just pristine, untouched snow. And it's just like driving on marshmallows. It's beautiful. Get to the highway. It's been plowed. So I call my wife, said, I'm fine. I'm made it to the highway. It's plowed, totally empty highways. So I zip up to 60 miles an hour, and I start to relax, and the heaters are on, defrosters, my body temperature shifts, and I've got this left side chest pain, and I suddenly do have something called a vasovagal event, where all my blood vessels suddenly dilate through me relaxing, change the temperature, the chest pain, all that, and I passed out instantly. And I woke up in a river with no evidence that there was any civilization around, and I felt amazing. I felt like I had just been rebirthed. Like there was just this bliss state, and I thought I had disappeared into a different universe or a different timeline of humanity. I don't know what happened, but I was on highway, and now suddenly it's just river. And it's an ecosystem I've not seen in this area before. It just looks different. And there's 20 inches of snow. And my first thought was like, wow, I just didn't picture snow in heaven. Like, that's a lot of shoveling for eternity, it seems like. So I was just having this funny moment of like, not what I pictured, but it was beautiful. Sun was filtering through, and it was just overwhelmingly white and peaceful.
And you were just you, no car, no nothing.
I'm in the car in a river. Yeah. I look down in my lap, and my cell phone's sitting there, and time's sitting right on it. I pull up my last call. So it'd been 7 minutes that I had been out, which is a very long time for a vasovagal event. It's usually a couple seconds. And so I don't know what happened during that time, and it's not very important, but I experienced for a moment what I'd seen my patients do, which is experience myself, felt myself for the first time as an adult or as a young child. I hadn't probably been in that state since I was, 2 or a little bit before. The lack of fear, guilt, and shame, the lack of any sense of I'm incomplete, to the sense of I am here in this new universe, and I've landed somewhere in space-time, and I've landed in this thing, and nature is dazzling me, and I feel amazing. My body was like, I was not experiencing that chest pain. I was just like, I was in an ecstatic state. And so, again, whether it's just passed out, I have no idea. But the state of being was, I think, what set into motion my next few years. From there, I actually went and I left the university months after that and started to realize all of the companies and dreams that had been shown to me a couple of weeks earlier. And in that journey, I got a third subspecialty in hospice and palliative care. And so I was running a nutrition center for reversing chronic disease through food as my kind of part of realizing my dream. But to pay the bills, because I wasn't making any money in clinic, I was working as a part-time medical director for a hospice. And in that, I was admitting 80 patients a week to die. And when you do that for 4 years, that adds up to a lot of death and dying. And I had this new anchor point of, I remember what it feels like to be without fear, guilt, and shame in my body. I remember the elation of being whole for a moment. And I remember how fast I fell out of it too, as the day unfolded. And what had happened is I had passed out on the highway, and I climbed out of the river. I was soaking wet in my doctor's outfit, and climbing up through all this snow, and thought I was like in a wilderness. And then suddenly got up to the top of this embankment, and Highway 29 was right there. There was no cars on it, just empty. And then there's a man standing right in the middle of the lane.
A man?
A man. And he's a state trooper hat, the whole thing, no car in sight. So then I was like, oh my gosh, maybe this is like the gates of heaven or something. And this is obviously St. Peter. And of course I would make him a state trooper in my mind. And so I'm like having this complete existential experience. And it starts to get really ridiculous in those next few minutes, because he looks at me so confused, but very earnest. He never cracks a smile. He's looking at me climbing over this bank, and I've got my doctor badge on, and I'm in loafers and dress shirt and everything else. So I'm like crawling out of the woods. He's staring at me, and he's like, son, how did you get here? And so then I'm like, oh shoot, this is my resume. Like, I got to get into heaven here. Like, I got to figure out what have I done well. So I started literally going through my life. Like, well, I grew up in this little church in Boulder, Colorado, and I'm the oldest of 3 kids, and I was a great big brother, and I was this, and then I did this, and missions work in the Philippines and birth babies, and I'm a doctor, I'm a great dad, and my kids are in ballet and fencing, and I'm doing this stuff. And he's looking more and more concerned, which makes me feel like I'm failing the test.
Yeah, now this guy is a drunk driver.
Yeah, exactly. He's like, this guy's on drugs at 7 o'clock in the morning, driving through snow or whatever he's doing. Anyway, long story short, he finally stops me. He says, son, how did you physically get here? And so I just got really angry all of a sudden, because I was at the end of my wits. It was just like, how the hell did you get here physically? And he, to his credit, then suddenly burst out laughing. He's like, that probably looks confusing as well. And he says, my patrol car's down around the corner of the highway. He said, I got a call on my radio that somebody got off the highway, and I was looking for you. And how did you get here? And I said, well, my vehicle's down in that river. I don't know how I got there. He's like, well, let me show you what I just saw. And so he takes me back around the corner of the highway, and you can see where my vehicle drifted off the highway at 60 miles an hour and jumped a 6-foot embankment of snow that had plowed over the guardrails. And the vehicle had dropped about 30 feet off this cliffside, and then landed on 2 wheels and drove for about maybe 30 meters, and then settled onto 4 wheels on this steep embankment. Drives nearly a quarter mile around the corner on this embankment, finds the only break in the trees, takes a 90-degree turn, drives down into the river without touching a tree. And that's where I woke up. And so when he showed me that, I started to get this overwhelming experience of like, I just had an experience that was outside of my physical plane. There's something happened to me that can't be logicked, and I was an extremely logical human being. Like I wanted to understand everything I was seeing all of the time. That's what made me a great scientist and doctor and everything else, And this was just something that was so outside of the mental constructs that I could put nothing together for this. And it was exactly what I needed. I needed an experience that was so radically outside of my human mind that it would lead to a deeper state of surrender to my path, whatever was going to happen next.
I love that the trooper showed you the accident. And here's why. When you described your car drifting off, jumping a 30-foot embankment, landing on two wheels, then driving a quarter of a mile, then taking a 90-degree turn through two trees that it missed and ending up in a river, and you were largely unscathed, but left with a profound near-death experience that changed your entire life. And you do strike me as somebody who is extraordinarily smart and logical, that you needed the universe to deliver something unexplainable to wake you up to the reality that there's something bigger going on, and you're going to be the one to figure it out.
I wish I could say I was that easy to teach, but the universe was about to see how stubborn my human mind was. And so they actually managed to lift that vehicle out of the river by its back bumper with two tow trucks on different sides of the river. And so the vehicle was suspended 100 feet in the air and came across back onto the highway and set down on its front bumper. The state trooper pushed on the roof just slightly, and it just like started to tip down onto its wheels. They lowered it down onto the four wheels. I got in, started up. There wasn't a scratch on the car, not a scratch on me.
You drove to the hospital after that?
Drove to the hospital. So again, this is a situation where nothing is running in the town, so I knew it would be more time. And by this time, it had been 45 minutes, and I needed to get to the hospital quick. And I was fine. I was like unharmed, feeling actually amazing in my body and my spirit. And so I drove and worked a 12-hour day, saw 700 patients that day. Just like we only had like 6 doctors running the entire medicine floors, and so it was a busy, busy day. Got home that night. And by that night, I had already gotten disconnected from the experience. And so I was already back in my mind because I thrust myself right back in, got to do everything, got to save the world, duty, responsibility. This is what makes me valuable as a human being, is I can go and work my ass off in a hospital. And so by the end of the day, I'd already lost touch with it. And so here's probably one of the most important events of my life. And it only took 12 hours in the hospital to disconnect me from that event. So I went home that night. I hadn't told my wife much of what had gone on. I just didn't want her to worry. So I got home, told her that night, and fell asleep like 11. And the phone rings at 6 a.m. And I pick it up, and this is Lieutenant so-and-so. I'm looking for Dr. Bush. I'm like, oh, this must be the accident yesterday. Yeah, this is Zach Bush. He's like, we need you in Haiti, Port-au-Prince in 6 hours. And I was like, wait, who are you? This is Lieutenant so-and-so from the U.S. Navy, and we've got you on the top of our list for large-scale emergency relief. There was just a huge earthquake in Haiti, and we're sending the Navy ship Comfort into the bay right now. We need you on that ship to run a hospital ward. I was like, I'm not in the Navy, but I had trained a couple years earlier and deployed a large group for emergency relief for Katrina, which had happened down in New Orleans. So that had ended me up on some Navy list somehow. And so 6 hours later, I was in Port-au-Prince Bay being dropped onto the Navy ship. And so that all happened in a 30-hour period. And so that's how stubborn I think my mind was, as I needed even a deeper schism and break from my reality at the hospital. And I worked on that Navy ship for a couple of weeks and took care of 780 women that had been crushed in that earthquake that became quite famous. But I needed to see all of that. And so the universe, in a very short period of time, took me out of my mental constructs and challenged me with a whole bunch of new realities that, again, just once I came back from that, I couldn't reintegrate into my previous belief system.
What are some of the biggest takeaways and lessons that you've learned from being around so many near-death experiences, from having a very profound one, which you just described, from witnessing so many people that have died in 2 natural disasters, and as your work as a hospice doctor, what are some of the biggest takeaways that you have that you wish people who are living Anybody that can hear this would know.
You are the most beautiful thing. You are the entire divine expression of your soul. And that's where the near-death experience is a gift, is if you can actually feel what it feels like to be whole. It's not something to be achieved. You've always been whole. You were whole at the beginning. You will still be whole at the end of your life journey. If there's only a perception that you are incomplete right now, you are the most beautiful thing. This is what happens in near-death experiences. If you can start to feel the universe, if you start to feel yourself, you start to realize you can access information that never entered your mind.
You know what I just freaking loved about both your story and the way that you're explaining this is that you've defined a near-death experience as a completely different thing. I'll never look at that term the same way again. Like, it literally is a moment where you escape your mind and you drop into deep connection and wholeness. So how does somebody listening access what you've learned from near-death experiences and from witnessing so many people dying and caring for them as a hospice doctor? How do you bring that wisdom or that experience into your day-to-day life?
You are right now clinging to everything around you out of fear that you're incomplete. You're clinging to your little rituals. It might be your morning cup of coffee. It might be the way in which you pack the kids' school lunch. It might be the way in which you drive to school. It might be the way in which you show up at work. It might be the way in which you organize your email box. You've got all these rituals in your day. Anything that takes you out of that construct for a moment. When a child says something, you get goosebumps, or an elder speaks to you and you get goosebumps. That is a momentary near-death experience. That's why child speak is so deep and often gives you goosebumps. When a child drops a wisdom bomb on you, it lights you up in those goosebumps. That's an experiential moment of a soul speaking. If you've gotten goosebumps from anybody speaking to you, that's one of their moments where they just came into alignment with their coherence, their complete waveform of truth. And a child is always speaking from that space to a certain age, which is typically around age 2. They start to learn how to watch behaviors around them. And this is when they start to get an idea of they are different than others. They're the kid and that's their brother. And so they're being trained to believe that they're separate from everything.
And that's the split that you're talking about.
And that's the terrible 2s and the 3s and everything else that are so difficult for a child, because they're going from a state of being complete to the terrifying reality of they are incomplete. And that's why I think 2 and 3 look so difficult on the psyche of a child. And that's why they're so labile with their emotions and everything's overwhelming, because they are starting to learn a reality of disconnected, truths, or disconnected to half truths.
You know what I just got is that if you consider what you're saying, that any human being that comes into this world, you're born, that you are completely intact and whole and basically an expression of pure love and connection and oneness with everyone around you. And you can see that in a baby's eye. That if you then jump all the way to the end of someone's life, and if you've ever been with somebody as they are passing on, they're whole, and your ability to look at them in the eyes with love, forgiveness, all of it, is the now same experience. And if I think about my own experience of my life, there are those moments, I just cry. I think like one that comes to mind is thinking about being at the bottom of the aisle on my wedding day. And I looked straight down the aisle and Chris turned and he flashed this like huge smile. And it was that same experience of wholeness. And there are other periods of my life, I think a lot of times, like when I'm outside and you see, like right now in Vermont, the fireflies are going crazy. And so when I take in a moment in nature like that, and you have this like blip of wholeness, that's what you're talking about, that experience right there.
That's exactly right. I love where you're laying this out, is that there's basically bookends of the human experience that everybody's going to have. They're going to come in whole and they're going to leave whole. And as I watched those happen over and over again, I saw a lot of them in the ICU. I spent 10 years working in intense hospital settings. And in those years, I got used to seeing these these moments of time where you really do see a soul showing up as it exits the frailty of the human mind and then comes back in with new information to the mind, but not to itself. Because at no point does it get surprised about its journey. It's never like, I can't believe I just did this. It simply says, I went to this place, I saw this, and I'm bringing this back to this human mind.
So what you're basically saying is that in the ICU, for example, where you would be the witness to all of these near-death experiences, and people would then wake up from a coma, or they would, quote, come back to life, there would be an absolute certainty and knowingness and lack of judgment about what they had experienced during that near-death experience. Like they just came back like, this is the truth. This is where I was. And that almost like certainty started to strike you.
That's exactly right.
Does it always have to be with another person? Like when you are out in nature and you are just struck with awe and you have no thoughts, it's just a pure experience. Is that, from at least like a biological standpoint, a near-death experience because you are back whole and connected in the moment to yourself and to the world around you again?
Maybe you've had the experience of a wild animal suddenly coming into an interaction with you.
Yeah, just actually the other day, we were walking down the back drive. We have a logging road on the mountain that we live on. And we had the dogs, and about 100 yards down the dirt path, a black bear walked across. And so we, of course, stopped. And thank God the dogs didn't see her. And I assume it's a her because the cubs have been born recently, and you see a lot of them running around where we live in southern Vermont. But there was a moment where she stopped and turned and looked, and we made eye contact. And it's as if sound and time disappeared. And then all of a sudden, I don't know how long I stood there with Chris, and we just saw this bear. And then the thought came in, oh my God, the dogs. And then she turned and walked away, and it was over. And that's an example of what you're describing, is this ability that you have in your life now to come into these moments and drop in to connection and presence in your life. Because it's true. If you really think about people that are dying, I mean, you have more experience this than I do, but I'm married to somebody who's a death doula and a hospice volunteer who sits with people who are dying and supports people who are near the end of their life. And I always wonder, are people scared? Are they afraid? And Chris talks a lot about how, no, people actually seem to be more at peace. I mean, is that what you found? Do you find that people are like, when they're approaching death, they're not as afraid? Because I think it's normal to be afraid of dying, isn't it?
There's great terror in the end of something, because to die incomplete suggests that there's a brokenness that didn't heal. And so the reason we develop fear of death, I believe, is because we can feel this state of incompleteness that we perceived. We know that there's something deep that needs to heal, and we can feel it all the time.
How do you reconnect then? Or what do you say as a parent? Like I'll give you an example. So I was talking with one of our daughters the other day, and she lives out in Southern California. And I remember when I was in my mid-20s, I was terrified of dying, terrified of getting on a plane, terrified of a car crash, terrified of my parents dying, terrified that something might happen. And there was something in the news, I don't know what, about something going on in California, and she was getting herself all worked up. What would happen if there was a natural disaster and something happened to me? And I said, well, you would die. And she said, yeah, but I don't want it. And I said, but once you're dead, doesn't matter. And worrying, like I was very pragmatic about it. And I realized upon reflection, Dr. Zach, that I was terrified of dying probably up until about 6 years ago.
What happened?
Well, what happened is I got my shit together.
Yeah.
And I worked on myself, and I went to therapy, and I started pursuing work that was meaningful. And I worked very hard to get reconnected to myself so that I was proud of the person and that I am and how I was acting. And I felt a sense of meaning in the way that I was spending my time. And I had faced a lot of the things from my past or cleaned up behaviors or made amends along the way of doing work for 5 to 10 years and just trying to be a happier person, trying to not hate myself so much that I was on a plane one day. I'll never forget this. I remember the moment like it was yesterday because I used to be terrified of flying. I had so many rituals before I would get on a plane to make sure it would not go down. I would literally get to the airport and I would be on edge the whole time. And when I got to the waiting area, I'd be scanning the area looking, okay, is there a baby getting on the plane? Okay, good. Is there anybody in the military? Okay, good. Is there anybody in a wheelchair? Okay, good. Is there anybody that is a person of, like spiritual? Okay, good. Oh, do the pilots have the military style haircuts? Okay, great. Because I would then say, oh, all these people, if they're getting on the plane, God, the universe not going to let this sucker go down. And then I would get on the plane and then I would start bargaining with myself as if I have any control about what's going on. All right, once the seatbelt goes in, you can start breathing. Then when we take off and we get past that point where they then ding the bell, like all of this active crazy making in my brain over something I can't control. And that was my life. And a number of years ago, I was on the right side of the plane. I was right up against the window because I remember looking out the window and it dawned on me. I hadn't done any of that stuff before I got on this plane. And it dawned on me that I wasn't nervous at all. And then it dawned on me, well, it's because I'm actually not afraid of dying. And the reason why I'm not afraid is that I feel like I have done the work that I needed to do to be connected back to myself. And that I was proud of how I had changed my life. I was proud of how I was showing up in relationships. I was definitely, as I sat there and thought about it, very sad about the idea of missing out and not being alive, when my kids get married or when they have kids or just, living a much longer life because I was actually really enjoying it. And so I feel like I understand what you say when you say most of us are afraid of dying because we have not taken the time to do what we can do while we are alive, to feel more connected to ourselves and to feel more of those moments of wholeness, whether you're staring at a bird or you are looking at somebody in the eyes or you are staring into the eyes of a baby. And instead, I think the sadness, I would imagine, witnessing so many people dying is just knowing that they had it in the beginning and they didn't experience it really again till the end.
Yeah, I think there's levels of the sadness, but back to that realization that wholeness never left you. Whatever happened in your life, it looked like a good life, looked like a bad life. That's the beauty of near-death experiences. You suddenly realize it was all perfect. Like the whole thing was perfect. It was exactly what I needed to learn the things I learned, to become the one I became, and ultimately to realize I was whole the entire time. Any perception of incompleteness was incorrect. I put myself on a human journey so that I would feel everything. And I wanted to feel heartbreak. I wanted to feel deep depression. I wanted to feel the elation of coming out of depression. I wanted to feel, a cup of coffee in the morning. I wanted to feel sex. I wanted to feel these things in my life. And so I got to do all of that. And I had that experience, and that's beautiful. But I would say that one thing for us to get excited about is that what you just described, the journey of getting out of fear of flying, was one possible, description or reality that allowed that to occur, is you were moving from a previous state of trying to make everybody else proud of you to a state of being just proud of yourself. So that's what I would call maybe like one of the most fundamental shifts that a human can have. And so it's a relief when no longer are you trying to perform for everybody else. And I think that is a big thing to celebrate when we finally reach that state of like, you know what, I'm just going to perform for me today. And if I'm happy with the day and my value systems align with my behaviors, then I'm proud of myself. But the deeper opportunity then lies next is, are we willing to go to the point where there is no pride because there was nothing to do or achieve? There was, in fact, the release of all of that belief because you were valuable before you did anything to be proud of. And if you can approach that space, we can move into it for moments. You mentioned a few of them. Breath work, I think, is a powerful way to do this. I think your husband, Chris, is training in holotropic breath work right now for his death doula stuff, probably, but super potent thing. There's many traditions coming out of India, Africa, South America, North American original peoples all over the world had some form of breath work. And there was some sort of chant, dance, storytelling at the fire, all of these putting people into wholeness. And so we act as we do because we lost these mechanisms of near-death experiences moment by moment, day by day.
Reminding you of who you are at your core.
Before you do anything.
Yes.
Before anything is performed for yourself or for others, before pride can enter the equation, because you realize you were the whole beauty of the divine the moment you took your first breath, and you were whole at that moment. And you will be the same at the end of life when you've been in a coma for 6 months and you've done nothing. And yet the divine state there is whole.
It's encouraging in some ways and surprising to hear you as a hospice doctor, Dr. Zach, talk about that state as being divine and whole. When somebody is in a coma or somebody is in a near-death experience or somebody is about to die. And I guess the reason why I'm realizing is because we project our own pain and suffering onto that situation as we observe it.
We're observing a rebirth event. And you can imagine what it looks like maybe to a twin who's in the womb and suddenly watches the disappearance of the only other soul that has ever physically been around in this lifetime. And that thing suddenly just disappears down the dark tunnel and it's gone. And there'd be sorrow and disappointment and everything else. But the reality is that thing just went down a dark tunnel and just entered a world that is so beautiful you can't even describe it. And that second twin then goes down the journey of the tube minutes later and is born into this extraordinary environment. We are all twins in a womb right now, watching each other pass down a birth canal. We call it death, and we think it's horrible because we have a split human mind, but it's always a rebirth. You cannot destroy or create energy. It's the first law of thermodynamics and physics. And so that soul that allowed you to self-organize in your mother's womb is still a soul that's self-organizing that entity into its next expression as it comes out the birth canal on the other end.
I love that you just said that, because when people ask me, so what do you think happens when you die? I always say, I think about it like birth. Like when you were in the womb, you had no knowledge of the world you were about to be born into. And the fact that you had no knowledge of it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. And I believe the same thing, that there is this whole world you're about to be born into when you die. And just because you're not quite sure what it is doesn't mean it doesn't exist. What is an intuitive psychic medium, Kim?
We are all intuitive. I don't like labels. I don't even like the word psychic or medium, to be quite honest with you. And I do feel that as time goes on, that title is moving away from me, because I am more of a teacher of energy. And energy, and I'm very science-based in my mind. As spiritual as I am, that's as science-based as I am. I always love science because my inquisitive mind needs to know how things work. And when I couldn't really understand how I knew these things about complete strangers, I needed to research. And in my research, I found that we are all intuitive. It's the language of energy that was suppressed because there might just have been some people that didn't want us to know our power in this universe. And it's all coming back to us now. We're all getting in touch with our intuition. I always say, and I'm a very critical thinker, and I always like to use common sense. If the animals in the wild have intuition that tells them when danger is near, that guides them throughout to find food, and everything else, instinctively knows how to reproduce, why wouldn't more intelligent creatures on our planet have the same, if not more, of that same wisdom inside of them. So it's a program that we've been conditioned to let go of, beginning with school, really, or beginning with the way our parents learned, and then they teach it to us. I wrote all about this in my books, because it's really teaching about an unlearning of blockades where we're just so blocked in our thinking. So it's really about what you did, Mel. It's about trusting and allowing and letting go of control. And what I teach most people when I teach people how to get in touch with their gifts is releasing the control if they can, which was what you did. You put your ego aside for the betterment of your family, especially your son. Mm-hmm. I have 3 sons. There's nothing we wouldn't do for our children, as you know. And I like what you said. You said everything within me knew it was the truth, AKA the word resonance. It resonated with you, with your soul, with your higher knowing. And pretty much that's really how we should live our life. And following you, you teach this anyway. You just don't put a label on it. But you teach this. We're very similar in what we teach.
I agree. You just have this mystical sledgehammer in the way that you deliver the message that makes it very hard to ignore. How did you start to realize you had this gift of speaking to and delivering messages from people's relatives that have died?
So, long story short, as a child, every night going to sleep, there was this group of statuesque people with depressed looks on their face standing at the foot of my bed. I now know them to probably be spirits from a depression era. They were all in black. They never cracked a smile. I didn't understand who they were, what they wanted, and why were they in my room every single night of my life.
You could see them?
I saw them. They did look transparent, like I can see through them, but yet I can see everything about what they were wearing and what they looked like, just a little bit transparent. And I slept with the covers over my head every night. My sister and I shared a bedroom, and she's my bigger sister just by a few years, but she was always my source of comfort because she was older and she just always guided me. And I felt safe knowing she was next to me, but I was all alone in this situation because she never saw what I saw.
Did you ever tell her what you were seeing?
Absolutely.
And what did she say?
Go to sleep. No, I don't see anything. There's nothing there. I would tell my dad, I'm not going in the room. When we would come home from relatives or we were out for the evening, we would come home. I wouldn't go in my bedroom. And my dad would humor me every single night, checking in the closet, checking under the bed, letting me know the coast was clear, right? So I trusted my dad. No sooner did he leave the room, there they would appear as soon as he left, and my sister would fall asleep. Mommy, please, could I sleep with Daddy? And you, no, go back. They were very strict about that. Having my sister was a huge source of comfort. I would keep her up at night with every distraction I could. I told her to teach me how to spell. I mean, what was I, 7 maybe? 5 to 7? Please teach me how to spell. And I'll never forget her teaching me the word elephant, because it was the longest word. And I just kept her up because I didn't want to contend by myself. And I was up most of the night contending with this group of people. There were about 5 of them in total. And I started looking at relatives. My dad's from Europe, from Italy. And I started looking at photo albums as I got older. Mm-hmm. And I said, gee, this is the kind of attire that these people always were wearing. They went away when in my teenage years. We had moved into a new home, and they followed me for a bit, and then I didn't see them. Through my teenage years, my life was completely normal. And I say I was a mere mortal at that time.
Let me ask you a question. Were you were scared because you were a little kid, but did you have any, like, other than covering your head, did you try to talk to them? Did you yell at them? I don't know how I would deal over the course of 5 or 6 years looking at the end of my bed and seeing ghosts.
It's true. So as a child, as you know, children looked to adults for body language, for a smile, crack a smile, to show their approval, to show that they're kind. They never showed any emotion, but this like that, like just nothing. Then they would follow me to school.
What?
I never saw them. I felt them following me. We would walk to school, and I always felt like I had these people, like, you know, when you go up a flight of steps and you just feel like something's behind you. Everyone has experienced that once in their life. And walking through a dark alley, you feel like some weird vibe. I've always felt this energy around me, and I just assumed it was them. You know, back then, I don't know. Parents really didn't pay much mind about things like this. I think now they're more open. Parents are more open to their children when they say they see a man. I get emails daily of parents telling me their children sees a man with a black hat, which is not always so great. I understand it now way more than I ever did. Of course, we didn't know any of this.
What do you understand now?
What I understand now is these were either trapped souls connected to the property. My father and my uncle built that home. I don't know about the land, or they might have been immigrants to my dad's family that I don't know, that may have gone back generations. Definitely from the Depression era. The one man was gaunt. He looked like he really could use a good meal. They looked just so miserable, honestly. So I know now that energy cannot be created nor destroyed, as we know by science. It can only change form. And energy cannot be destroyed. So if our soul is made up of pure energy, which it is, how can we be destroyed in our consciousness? So it's consciousness that can't be destroyed, literally. Again, I go back to energy, because energy is real. We use it every day of our lives. We don't see electricity. We don't see the cell phone signals, but yet we use them as they translate through the receivers that we have in our homes, right?
Yeah.
We have fuse boxes for our electrical. We have cell phone towers for the signals. And we have mediums for the energy, the signal of deceased consciousness, or even consciousness itself. Because I learned that I am able to communicate with people in a coma, or people with Alzheimer's or dementia who's kind of not really in their bodies, but their consciousness is free. So I'm able to connect with that. I only learned that throughout the years of doing this for so many years.
I remember when you were on my talk show and we met 3 years ago, you said something that I found very comforting. I turned to you before you started reading people and talking to the spirit guides that had come into the room. I said, now, are there dead people in this talk show room? And you were like, oh yeah, everybody always has 1 or 2 people with them. And I found that to be very comforting. Is that true, that we tend to have somebody that is with us as we're going about our day-to-day life, whether we feel them there or not?
It's absolutely true. They are always there as a frequency.
Why do you think those 5 souls followed you? Do you think they sensed that you could connect with the energy?
Great question. They absolutely can sense it. And again, there's a little bit of a backstory. Prior to being able to seeing, I even backtrack it a few more years when it was Christmas Eve and my mom was in the kitchen cooking, big Italian feast. And I was a curious little girl, as I still am. I found a safety pin on the floor right by the Christmas tree. And I wanted to see what would happen if I stuck it in the electrical socket. And I did. And my body shot across the room. I got electrocuted. My right arm was completely charred. My mother rushed me to our family doctor, who at the time was always on call. As you know, they don't have that. That's a gift that we don't have anymore. He said to my mother, meet me at my office. Actually, that doctor saved my life too, several times. And he wrapped my arm in this ointment called Silvadene. And he told my mother that I may or may not have any scarring. Now, the only reason I know that this opened up something in my auric field, which everybody has an energy field around them, it was a tear in my aura. That's how they got in. And the only reason I know this is years later, I picked up a book in the library when I couldn't control the voices and the information that was coming at me. I needed to find some information on this, and there wasn't much. But there was a book called The Link, L-I-N-K. I bought this book on Amazon. I have it. I opened to a random page. Nothing is a coincidence. And the page said that most mediums have found that prior to the age of 10, they were hit with high doses of electricity, such as being struck by lightning, electrocution. How did I open to that page? They wanted me to know. They wanted me to know because I needed to understand. And I had a pact with God. Because I was raised Catholic, and I needed to know that I wasn't going against my religion and what the Bible says, which it does say, do not consult with mediums. It does say that in the Bible. And I went to Catholic school for a short time, and I was pretty familiar with the commandments, and I needed to know. And I said, if you want me to do this work, I need you to work with me. I need to know that I'm not doing anything against, you, God, and that I need to know that I'm not going to be, condemned to hell. At that time, I didn't know much. I'm a seeker of the truth. I now know that we all have this ability to connect with energy, and that's all this is energy, honestly.
I have so many questions to ask you.
Okay. Shoot. I'm all ears.
So you get electrocuted as a little girl. You start to see these 5 spirits and energetic consciousness at the end of your bed. You then move and you sense that they're following you, but they don't come to the new house. What is it that happened as you got older that made you realize, holy cow, this isn't some weird thing. I actually have a gift. What was that moment?
Okay. So fast forward, my sister had called me one day. Now we're both adults. We both have our children. Everything is normal. I don't see dead people. I don't hear dead people. My life is normal.
Okay.
When I married my husband, my life was normal. I wasn't a psychic. I wasn't seeing dead people. Nothing like that. My sister said, there's this psychic going to be in town. Would you like to go? I said, oh, yeah, that sounds like fun. We go see this woman. She was not giving readings. She was giving a lecture. And her lecture was about how she walked into her mediumship gifts after her sister passed away. When we walked in, she had us sign this mailing list with our phone number and our address. I didn't think anything. Okay, phone number, address. My sister signed it right after me. About a month later, I get a call from that same woman telling me that she lived in my area. Actually, she did. She lived pretty much around the corner from me. And that she told me I am a medium and that I was meant to do big things with my gifts, and that she was giving classes on mediumship. Now, first of all, I am a New Yorker. I don't trust. I don't fall for anything. I'm very level-headed as much as I know. And I was very skeptical. I'm like, oh, this lady needs students. She's targeting me. I live around the corner. I said, oh, I don't have childcare. Her classes were in the morning.
Okay.
And I had just had my third son. I had no sitter. I was a stay-at-home mom. And she said, I'm going to let you slide, but I won't forget about you. So I called my sister. I said, did that woman, Holly, call you for her classes? She said, no, I didn't get a call. Okay. 1 year later, she calls me again. She said, I am being pushed. You need to take my class. She said, but guess what? It's not in the morning. It's at the night. My classes are at night. You have no excuse. So now I didn't know what I would see. She really did not take no for an answer at all. So I did go to her class, and I didn't know if I was going to see chickens getting their heads cut off or voodoo. I didn't know what this was. So I looked around. I saw everybody look kind of normal, and I was ready to bolt out the door if I saw anything that did not resonate. She was a nice Jewish woman. So, I looked at, where does religion fit into this?
Yep.
That was my question. I went to 12 classes in total. Every time, there was once a month that she invited us to read each other. And I never went. I never went to that. I didn't want to read anybody. So she wouldn't stop. She's telling me that my name will be well known. I didn't believe a word she said. None of it. You're meant to do this. You're going to be... So anyway, I'm done with her classes. Another month later, she calls me to do one of her psychic fairs. I said, I don't read. She said, yes, you do. I said, no, I don't read. I said, Holly, did you ever see me come to any of your classes and do readings? She said, no, you never showed up. I said, so why are you calling me? I can't do it. She said, okay. I didn't do the fair. Would that month, that's when the water faucet turned on. I was hearing everybody in the heavens as I would do mundane tasks. I was blow drying my hair. I was vacuuming. I was washing dishes. And this is what I would hear. Hi, my name is Lisa. I died in a car accident. Hi, my name is Tracy. Please get in touch with my mother. And I'm like, no, this can't even be real. I'm imagining this. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore, and I had to call her. She said, I've been expecting your call. I said, well, you know what I'm about to say? And she laughed. She's deceased now anyway, by the way, this wonderful woman who was such a catalyst on my journey. I said, Holly, how do I stop the voices? She said, you can't. I did her next psychic fair. I was never more terrified in my life. After the first reading, it hasn't stopped, and I've been on this journey ever since. And that's my story.
Wow.
I mean, there's a lot more in between, but, I gave you the Cliff Notes.
Well, what I love about it is you had to do that moment of letting go and leaning in. That something bigger that cannot be explained is actually what's meant for you. I'm going to share those 3 steps with you that I took to make powerful changes and reinvent my whole life so that you can use those same proven, simple steps to make whatever changes you want in the next year of your life. We'll be right back. Hey. All right. So today's my 52nd birthday. And normally on my birthday, I wake up excited because I feel like I've just been handed a clean slate and the opportunity to create a brand new year. And I spend the day reflecting on the last couple of years, and I spend the day brainstorming about what I want to create this year. And this year is not a normal year. I did not wake up feeling excited. I woke up feeling lost. Because as I thought back over the last few years, it's been an incredible adventure, but I've experienced a tremendous amount of change in my professional and personal life that has just knocked me on my knees. From losing my daytime talk show, to having my book contract rescinded, to having the speaking business basically implode until at least another year from now, to to not being able to be with you face to face, to not being able to work with my team face to face. I just got rocked. And then on top of it, our son wanted to go to high school in Vermont. And so we are in the process of moving from the home that we've been in for over 20 years and raised our kids up to a very small town in southern Vermont where I know very few people and I feel very disconnected. And the result of all this is I feel stuck in between two lives. My old life, which has ended, and a new life that I have yet to create for myself. And when I look ahead to the future, I feel overwhelmed, I feel lost, I feel disconnected. In some ways, I feel like I don't even know who I am because I feel so disconnected from the things that make me feel alive and happy.
Oh my God. I was really lost. I mean, just hearing 52-year-old me sound like that, so sad, it just puts a pit in my stomach. Oh my God. And look, I can kind of laugh about it now because I'm on the other side of this thing. But when you're in it, it can be overwhelming. If I could go back in time and talk to the 52-year-old me, here's what I would do. I would say, first of all, that's a lot. You should have a good cry. Then I would give Mel a big, huge hug. Because in moments like that, we need reassurance. But then comes a tough love. I'd be like, look, Mel, you got to remember who you are. You can face this. And then I would drop this quote on her. Hey, woman, if you want to fly, you got to give up the shit that weighs you down. Toni Morrison said that, and boy, ain't that the truth. You got to give up the shit that weighs you down. And a lot of times, at least with me, what's weighing me down, it's my own attitude. And I know you can relate to that. I just hate that saying. It is what it is. No, it isn't. It is what you make it to be. The fact is, there is always something you can do to make yourself feel just a little bit better. And when you do something that makes you feel a little better, no matter what's going on, that boost in your mood, that boost in your attitude, it is essential to helping you face any challenge and improve any situation. And even though in that video I felt lost, there were 3 things that I did and that I continued to do over the past 2 years and that I continue to do now, all of which is rooted in research to pick myself back up and face the mess that my life had become. And more importantly, to start doing the work to create the life I wanted. I believe that you are capable of changing. I do. I've just seen too much evidence over the course of my career. Amazing changes that people just like you and me have made. So I know you're thinking, well, this is great, Mel, but where do I begin? So step number 1, you begin by making a wish. Just like that moment on your birthday when you close your eyes and wish for something to come true in this next year of your life. Right now, do the same. Close your eyes and think about the next year of your life. What do you want the next year of your life to look like? Begin by making a wish. That's how I began 2 years ago. Yep, my business was upside down, kids were in shambles, my husband was struggling with depression, and I was struggling with everything. I had to create a break from that moment of pain and allow myself to see something different. At the time, I had no idea what the new chapter of my life would be or could be. Here's what I did know. I don't want to stay in this one. And that's all you need to know. All you need to know is you don't want to stay in the place that you're in right now. That right there is a wish for something better. If you know what you don't want, it's very easy to change. As soon as you start removing or letting go of things that aren't working, you'll see all new possibilities. So let's go back to that video that I made on my 52nd birthday, because once I laid it all out there, I instinctually laid out the 3 steps I was going to take. I made a wish. I identified some things that I could do that would make me feel a little better. And I also changed my attitude. And if I can do it, so can you. So let's go back to the rest of that video from my 52nd birthday. And you're about to hear 52-year-old Mel wipe away the tears and start taking action.
here are the steps I'm going to take. Number one, self-awareness is critical. So recognizing that you feel lost or disconnected or suspended between your old life and your new life, overwhelmed, whatever you feel, it's so important to name it. Because when you name it, you bring it out of the feeling in your body and out into the world, and then you can do things to tame that feeling. Number two, the most important thing that you should do is move your body, because all this negative emotion is trapped in your body right now, and it's only through exercise and motion that you'll move it out of your body and you'll change your emotional state. So I am going to go put on an exercise tape and work up a sweat. Will that solve all my problems? No. But it will put me in a better emotional state so that I can think more clearly and more optimistically and start to see solutions. Number three, the best advice about happiness is happy people do things that make them happy. And so after you move your body and you change your emotional state, do one thing that makes you happy. And for me, I'm going to go out and buy myself some beautiful flowers. I've been doing a lot of writing this morning, just dumping all my thoughts onto paper. And I think journaling out your thoughts is a really important thing to do when you feel stuck or overwhelmed or suspended. And then finally, continue to remind yourself that this is temporary. This is temporary. This moment is temporary. These feelings are temporary. This feeling of stuckness and overwhelm is temporary. Oh, ooh. Oh. Those sneezes are temporary. And I think the biggest thing about that mantra, that this is temporary, is so is your life. And maybe that's why birthdays are overwhelming, because they always make you think about the timeline of your life. And so after you become self-aware and you move your body, which moves your emotions, and you do something simple that makes you happy, and you dump all your thoughts on a piece of paper, remind yourself that this is temporary and force yourself to start dreaming again. Because when you give up on your dreams, you give up on yourself. And I think that's one of the reasons why I woke up feeling lost today. When I look ahead, I don't see anything I'm looking forward to, because I haven't created something new to look forward to. And that's the secret. How you're feeling right now is a function of what you see in the future. And if you see overwhelm and a blank page and nothingness, that's how you're going to feel right now. And so I want you to dream big. I want you to put something on that paper that's out in that future, that calls to you, that gives you something to look forward to go for. That's how you will pull yourself out of it. And that's how I'm going to pull myself out of this too. So that's my birthday message. Not really inspiring. It's authentic and it's real, because this is where I am right now. And I also know that despite how low I feel, I have a choice. I have a choice about what I do about it. I have a choice about who I'm going to be in the face of it. And I have a choice about what comes next. So by God, I'm going to 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, push myself to create a future that really empowers me. And I want you to do the same too. If you could do anything for me for my birthday, it would be for you to dream really big today. That would mean everything to me. I love you.
Way to go, 52-year-old me. Mel, if you could only see where you end up 2 years later, you'd be so proud of yourself, woman. And you know what? When you follow these same 3 simple steps, you're going to be proud of yourself too. And I want to make sure you're not just listening along or watching this podcast episode on YouTube. I want to make sure you're able to apply these 3 takeaways and what you're learning in this episode to your own life right now. So let's recap what you've learned so far. You've learned about the fresh start effect and how temporal landmarks can trigger a whole new chapter in your life and unlock the intrinsic motivation that's inside you that's going to help you take action. Let's create your fresh start right now. Step 1. You already heard this. Make a wish. Just ask yourself one powerful question. What do I want the next year of my life to look like? Number 2, no matter how you feel, start taking the actions that align with what you want in your life. Stop making the mistake of waiting to feel happy or motivated before you take action. The secret, it's taking action first. Because if you can get moving, you can keep moving. And research shows that just a little boost in your mood impacts your productivity for the rest of the day. It impacts your focus. It gives you a little uptick in energy. Taking actions that align with the bigger vision and the future you, it taps into this huge body of research called behavioral activation therapy. Now, you're going to learn a tremendous amount about this therapy modality in future episodes of the Mel Robbins podcast, but here's how I'd summarize it for you. Act like the person you want to become in the future, no matter how you feel in the present moment. Look, I know it sounds simple. Act like the future you. But this is grounded in decades of research, and it works. This is how I've made every single change in my life. Once I figure out what I want to do or the kind of person I want to become, I figure out someone else in the world that's doing it, and I just reverse engineer it. And that's how you create a brick path that leads from where you are right now to where that wish of yours wants to take you. And every morning, wake up, take one action that aligns with what you want or the person that you want to become. And you can consider that action, it represents one brick. And if you keep doing that day by day, brick by brick, action by action, you're going to look up a year from now and you'll realize, oh my God, I just paved a brick path leading to my dreams. What the heck? Mel was right. And step number 3, in making powerful change in your life, find the proof that you can do it. It's all around you. You just need to look for it. Find anyone that has the life that you want or that has made the change that you want to make. The relationship, the career, the body, the family, the friend group. Anytime you see someone who has already made the change you want to make in your life, tell yourself, there's proof. It exists. Use people as evidence that, yes, you can have what you wish for too, if you're willing to work for it. See people as a light on the path to your future self. For years, that was not me. I was the opposite. I did not see other people as lights on my path. I saw people as robbing me of the lights that I wanted. I had this really stingy, jealous, and insecure attitude. If a friend of mine was renovating their kitchen, I would smile, that tight smile that people have when they're faking a smile. And I'd go, oh, it's so pretty. I love the white cabinets. But inside, I was seething with jealousy. And the reason why is because I believed that somebody else's happiness or success somehow was robbing me of mine. It's the opposite. Their beautiful kitchen means if I can work for it, I can have one too. Their amazing relationships means I can create it too. Their success or the business they've built means it's possible for you too. This alone, if you just do this third step, this one mindset flip, it is a complete game changer. Here's how you do it. There is unlimited success, happiness, and fulfillment in the world. You're not in competition with anyone. The only one that can rob you of the success, happiness, and fulfillment that you deserve is you and your excuses and fears and sitting around waiting to feel motivated. We're going to stop that today. Correct? Good. I'm glad you're listening because we're not doing that anymore. You're not going to wait 6 years to get started. You are going to start taking actions that align with what you want now. And when you see other people as evidence of what's possible for you, as you start seeing them not as extinguishing your light, but lighting the path that you're now walking on, holy cow, talk about throwing gasoline on that internal fire of yours. And by the way, don't you ever forget, you are a light on the path for someone else, and you don't even realize it. So think about that for a second. You are just a step or two ahead of someone else. I mean, if you've grieved the loss of a loved one, if you've changed your career, if you've survived heartache, if you've sold a family home, if you've reinvented some aspect of your life, if you've lost weight, if you're able to live with depression, if you were the first in your family to graduate from college, your life experience proves to someone else that it's possible for them too. So you better make sure that as you start chipping away at your own wishes and goals, that you hold that light up a little bit higher for everybody that's behind you. Now, these steps sound super simple. So I'm going to go through them one more time because I want to make sure you get how powerful they are. So let's go back to 52-year-old Mel and let me explain how each one of these steps worked for me back when I was sad and lost 2 years ago. So step number 1, you make a wish. You got to consider that question. What do I want my life to look like? Now, here's the truth. I couldn't answer that question 2 years ago. When I was 52, sitting there crying in the bunk room, I had no idea. I didn't know what I wanted. I didn't even know how to fix all my problems. And that's okay. You don't have to know the answers because those will come. But I did know I didn't want to stay feeling sad. And that's all I needed to start the change. Because step 2 is, once you know one small thing, I don't want to feel so sad. I don't want to be lost on my birthday. Just take actions that align with that thing that you want. I wanted to be happier. So I just focused on simple things I could do in that day to make me feel a little better. I get it. This isn't rocket science, but it works. But somehow, when you start to apply this stuff, it does feel like rocket science because it does launch you somewhere else. So that day I exercised, I bought myself flowers, I watched some stand-up comedy specials on TV so I would laugh a little. I just forced myself to do those things, to start walking toward what I wanted, which was just to feel a little happier. And look, this stuff doesn't work overnight. It works over time. And so every day I just woke up and I kept making myself do the things that made me feel a little better, even though I didn't feel like it. Simple things, exercising, journaling. And I kept on contemplating that question. What do I want my life to look like? And over time, day after day, brick after brick, as I added in positive forward action, aligned with feeling a little happier, and as I started to let go of things that were bringing me tension or sadness or friction, the answers started to emerge. I didn't want to travel so much for work. I didn't want to miss out on my son's high school the way I missed out on our daughter's high school experience. I wanted to get reconnected at a really deep level with my husband. I wanted to have time to see friends again and do things in the community. I didn't want to feel so damn busy and burnt out. And I didn't want to fall asleep with a to-do list on my mind and wake up every morning panic-stricken because of how much I had to get done. I wanted to simplify my life and get serious about being happier and more content in it. And as you ask yourself the question, what do you want your life to look like? Be patient. As I got clearer about what I wanted, and then I aligned my actions with that new vision, I started acting like the person I wanted to become. Simplifying means saying no. It means asking for help. And I chipped away day by day, and I started getting my mental health in order, slowed down, and I created an entirely different relationship with my husband by jumping into therapy. I also started being more present with my kids. And through all these small changes, I realized something bigger. It was time to sell the house that we had raised our kids in for 26 years outside of Boston, Massachusetts, and create a simpler life in southern Vermont. And as I started to say no and put what mattered to me first, I all of a sudden had more time to do what I really wanted, which is to launch this podcast, because I wanted to forge a deeper connection with you. Brick by brick, I laid a path with my actions, and now here I am. And if I can do it, you can do it. And that's why step number 3 is critical. Look for lights on the path. I looked for other people who had simpler business models, who had relationships, and who were doing the fun things that I wanted to do. And I just let them light the way toward the future I wanted. I kept telling myself, if they can do it, I can do it. And if you don't have anyone in your life like that, someone that lights the way for you, let me be that person. Tell yourself, if Mel Robbins can do it, then I can do it, because it's true. I'm living proof that if I can do it, you can do it. Big change starts with small wishes, like I want to feel happier. And tiny actions lead to massive transformation over time. Psychologically speaking, those little daily moves forward that I was making, trying to just be a little bit happier, moving toward the person I really wanted to become, it changes what you believe about yourself. Because doing the small things every single day, especially when you don't feel like it, it proves that you do have a choice about what you do and how you feel. And eventually, as you do the small things that make you feel better and better and better, you will feel better and better and better. And as you see yourself taking these little actions, you start seeing yourself taking control. And the momentum, the pride, and the confidence builds inside you. That's what happened to me. And I know the same will be true for you. And I have proof that this works. So yesterday, check this out. I got an email from a woman named Danielle. And guess what she was writing me about? She was writing to tell me about a year ago, she stumbled upon, guess what video? Yeah, you guessed it. The one I made on my 52nd birthday. I mean, come on, what are the odds? I was about to start taping an episode about the same video, and now suddenly I'm getting an email from a stranger telling me, oh, by the way, Mel, I saw that video on your 52nd birthday and I followed the steps in it and now my life has changed. What are the odds? Those are magical. And I always pay attention to that kind of stuff. So I reached out to her. I talked to her on the phone. And now I want you to listen to her read the email she sent to me yesterday. I just love this kind of stuff because it all connects. And before I play it, I want to warn you that this may be triggering for you to hear. Because when Danielle stumbled upon that 52nd birthday video of mine, she was in a way worse place than I was up in that bunk room. She was thinking of ending her life.
Your birthday saved my life. The video you made on your 52nd birthday was the first Mel video I had ever seen. And it was the last day of my life, or it would have been. A couple years previously, I had made a pact with one of my best friends that if either one of us were thinking about suicide, we would call one another. And we would talk as long as we needed. And at the end of the talk I had with him the night before, he made me promise him that I would give my life 24 more hours. Because a day can change everything, is what he said. And the next day, late afternoon, waiting for night to come, YouTube said I should watch your video. And I promised my friend 24 hours more, which I spent largely watching your videos. And I'm still here. You know, and it sounds a little bit even silly, but I remember at one point in the video when she just, she got to the point where she had laid it all out there, how she feels and what's going on, that she said, so this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to go out and I'm going to buy myself some flowers. And I was like, okay, I get that. Like, happiness isn't like a goal that like once you've completed all these things in your life that are wrong with it, then you're allowed to be happy. It's something that you actually have to try to do every day. And you can't just do this one little thing and that can make today better than it was.
I mean, come on now. Don't you just love Danielle? And look, over the past year, Danielle has been slowly chipping away at creating a better life. Just like I have for these past 2 years, and just like you're going to do now that you've listened to this episode. See, doing the little things every single day that align with where you're going and who you want to become, that's the secret. It works. The bottom line is, you have the power to change your life, period. You have to act like the person you want to become before you feel like that person. And if I can do it, you can do it. Plain and simple. There are things that are locked in your heart and your mind and soul that are calling to you. Stop denying it. There are changes that you want to make. Stop ignoring those changes. The whole point of this episode is to get you to not only believe that change is possible for you, but to start taking the steps to make the change a reality. I want you to claim what you want by the end of this episode. I want you to close your eyes and envision something amazing in this next year of your life, because yes, you can change. And yes, you can take the actions that will make that change a reality. I mean, is it going to happen overnight? Of course not. but it'll change over time. And if you can make today just a little better, guess what? You can make tomorrow a little better. And if you can have a better day, then you can have a better week. And if you can have a better week, you can have a better month. And those months lead ultimately down the path to the life that you envision for yourself. You deserve to be happy. And I believe that you're listening to this episode right now with Mel Robbins because you are meant to. I mean, think you could have picked a million other episodes, but you are on this one right now with me. Why? Because you're supposed to hear this at this exact moment in your life. You needed the reminder that there is something bigger that is meant for you. You got so much amazing stuff to do with this next year of your life. You got dreams to fulfill. You got lives to change. Stop focusing your energy on the stupid crap that weighs you down. It does not matter. Your past does not matter. The things that you're worried about, it doesn't matter. I mean, who cares if they didn't read your text? Who cares if you didn't get that job you applied for? Do you know how many jobs there are out there? It's time to see the bigger picture. It's time to focus on what you want. I know, I get it. It sucks when you get the courage to ask somebody out and they say no, or you work for months trying to close a massive sale and it goes to somebody else. And it's an awful feeling to wake up and have the depression be overwhelming. And you're not going to feel like kicking ass today. You're going to feel like licking your wounds. I got it. And here's what I'm going to tell you. Have a good cry. Give yourself a hug. And then dig deep and let Mel Robbins remind you of who you are. There is power inside of you to face this and to make it better. And you know it. In those moments when you feel like you just got punched in the gut, you have power within you. You have the ability to create this fresh start, to close your eyes, to envision what you want, instead of surviving through what you have. On those mornings when you wake up with the weight of the world on your shoulders, wake up and get your ass out of bed. Get dressed, get yourself out the door, and do the things that make you feel slightly better. Start acting like the person you want to become instead of the person you are today. Start taking actions that align with what you want in your life. It's only when you start to act before you feel ready that this turns around. I get it. You should have landed the funding. You did deserve the job. It does blow when you don't get into your dream school and your best friend does. But you know what? That's not going to stop you from getting what you want, because you are going to pick yourself back up. You know that this is going to pass. You know that through your actions and your attitude, you can change where you're at. And you know that you can make yourself feel a little bit better no matter what you're facing. And you can't tell me otherwise. Every single day when you wake up, the clock resets, the past expires, and the future, it is yours to create. There is an open road. There is a blank page. There is a wish that you need to turn into a reality. Today is a gift. And you get to decide what you're going to do with that gift. Is it one day or day one? You decide. You decide with the actions you take today. You can change. And today is the day to prove it to yourself. So go do it. You know, millions of people do tune in to your every word. And having watched and listened to your sermons and experienced what a force you are, I'm curious to hear your thoughts on what you believe most of us need to hear and be reminded of.
Most people underestimate how necessary their existence is in the world. And as a result, assume a posture of resignation that leaves the world less than what it could be. Our lives are not random. They are not coincidences. There is nothing more special about me than there is about you. We were all given these lives to make the world better. And I feel like most people underestimate how necessary they are. And as a result, they don't take their healing seriously. They don't take their thoughts seriously. We put ourselves on discount and give ourselves away to like the lowest bidder because we have these achings inside of us. But if we truly ever tapped into the high value of our breath, it would change what we speak. It would change what we think. It would change how we show up in the world. And it would quite literally make the world a better place. Like if you can just make your world, your friends, your family, your sisters, your coworkers, if you can take seriously the impact you have in your corner of the world, and then I take seriously the impact that I have with my influence in my corner of the world, those incremental commitments are how we begin to change the narrative of what it means to be humans surviving together.
That's beautiful. And I think you're right.
I do too.
I get struck by the number of people that write in every single day that are seeking purpose.
Yeah.
And I think to myself, well, your purpose is to heal and to share yourself and to make yourself better and then make everybody that comes in contact with you feel a little better, to spread the light that you're talking about. But it starts with you.
Yeah.
Hey, it's Mel. Thank you so much for being here. If you enjoyed that video, by God, please subscribe because I don't want you to miss a thing. Thank you so much for being here. We've got so much amazing stuff coming. Thank you so much for sending this stuff to your friends and your family. I love you. We create these videos for you. So make sure you subscribe. Mwah.